From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
Coming up on Ag Day, one dairy farmer's tough decision.
The hardest part was the history of it. We've milked cows on this farm for 102 years, and it's all that I've ever done on this farm.
Are we starting to see the end of higher beef prices?
I think they've peaked a little bit.
And damage estimates to farms and crops starting to come in following Hurricane Michael.
Ag Day, brought to you by the Chevy Silverado, the most dependable, longest-lasting full-size pickups on the road.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Cotton prices spiking on Friday as the problems continue from Hurricane Michael. This video from Roanoke, Virginia. People spent the weekend cleaning up from high winds, downed trees, and streets inundated with rising waters. In Georgia, the state's ag commissioner says crops, animals, and infrastructure all have taken a substantial loss because of the storm. He says poultry contributes $23.3 billion to Georgia's economy. That sector has so far reported the most widespread losses. He says 84 chicken houses, estimating to have held more than 2 million chickens, were destroyed. Damaging winds drove much of the cotton crop to the ground for a total loss. These pictures, shared on Twitter by Wes Briggs, absolutely heartbreaking. Wes says the storm was the worst thing he's ever lived through. He says his family is fine, but the cotton, as you can see, was stripped. He says all crops will be a total loss except for some of his peanuts. Now, Florida's ag commissioner said Michael also significantly hurt the state's peanut and cotton crops there, and he says only half of the state's tomato crop was harvested in time. The remaining half will be a total loss. Vice President Mike Pence was briefed in Washington by USDA leaders about the damage caused by Hurricane Michael. Pence promised help was on the way.
The commitment to rebuild and recover affects our coastline and our inland. It affects our cities and our farms. And the U.S. Department of Agriculture will play a critical role helping this vital agricultural area of Florida and Georgia and the Carolinas be able to recover, and we're grateful for that.
There weren't too many citrus trees in the path of Hurricane Michael, which devastated the Florida Panhandle, and there is more good news for Florida's orange crop. It is expected to increase for the first time in 7 years. The U.S. Department of Agriculture announcing 79 million boxes of oranges are expected during the coming season. That's a 76% increase from last season. Now, last year, the crop was hit hard by Hurricane Irma. Almost all Florida oranges are sold to juice manufacturers. The grapefruit crop also expected to grow 73%. We are hoping to hear more about this week, a planned meeting between the president of China and President Trump. China's foreign ministry spokesman offering no specifics on the possible meeting at this news conference. He did say China and the U.S. maintain communication and exchanges at all levels. The reported meeting could take place during the G20 summit in Argentina in late November. The Wall Street Journal and the Washington Post both citing officials saying the president had decided to proceed with the meeting with Xi Jinping. Now, a coalition of U.S. business groups fighting the president's trade tariffs, called the Tariffs Hurt the Heartland, say it's costing American businesses and consumers $1.4 billion a month. 3 farmers have agreed to plead guilty to marketing non-organic corn and soybeans as certified organic. Documents filed in federal court in Iowa show Tom Brennan, his son James Brennan, and family friend Michael Potter each intended to plead guilty to wire fraud. All 3 are identified in court papers as farmers from Nebraska. Prosecutors claim the 3 sold non-organic grains to an Iowa company that marketed them nationwide with an organic label. In particular, they allegedly used unapproved inputs such as pesticides and nitrogen to grow the crops. Court documents say the scheme lasted for 7 years and netted more than $10 million. The president announced in Council Bluff, Iowa last week he wants E15 sold year-round. But how big of an impact could that really have for corn producers? Well, right now, E15 can be used about 9 months out of the year in much of the nation. During those other 3 months, the summer months, it has been prohibited. Well, the EPA will need to write some rules about how to make the year-round use happen. Those still need to be approved, and the oil industry is expected to mount a court challenge. If all goes well, more corn will be used to make ethanol for E15. But one economist says it won't make a difference in the balance sheet for corn.
Not for this year, and I'm confident not for next year.
The administration's other focus is the EPA's use of the small refinery exemptions, or SREs. Irwin says ethanol usage has been holding strong despite the EPA letting some refineries out of the mandate to produce gasoline blended with ethanol. Cattle prices pulling back on Friday after a surge on the heels of the latest supply-demand numbers from USDA. USDA forecasting 2018 beef production to fall mostly because of fewer cattle headed for slaughter, lower carcass weights, and more cows in the mix. Overall, USDA cut beef production by 150 million pounds for 2018, which analysts say suggests a slightly firmer tone as herd expansion slows down.
We're slowing down clearly. These January 2019 numbers could be the peak. I wouldn't be surprised to see us grow just fractionally a little bit more in 2019, maybe for a peak in 2020. And of course, we're at holding at price plateaus that are still marginally favorable. It wouldn't take a lot for producers to expand a little bit more. And so if we continue to see very good demand, perhaps some growth in these export markets, we actually may pick up expansion a little bit more at some point.
Peel says prices seem to be peaking. He expects cattle to be steady to slightly lower through the next couple of months. From a hurricane to rain to snow, lots of weather issues slowing the harvest down in portions of the country. Meteorologist Cindy Clausen has more in today's Crop Comments. Good morning, Cindy.
Thanks, Clinton. Yeah, wild weather in the plains. Some areas of eastern North Dakota saw 17 inches of snow last week. And as you can see, all that snow really putting a damper on the harvest. This was a heavy, wet snow, and farmers don't know the extent of the damage until all that snow melts. The latest USDA crop progress report says only about 34% of the soybean crop in the state has been harvested. The 5-year average is 50%. We're going to have your national forecast coming up in just a few minutes. Clinton?
All right, thanks, Cindy. New York City has put an expansion of its organics collection program on hold. That's because apparently not enough people want to participate in the often smelly chore of setting aside their table scraps, soil food, and grass clippings. The city began its pilot program 5 years ago. The goal was to turn hundreds of thousands of tons of such leftovers into compost, gas, or electricity. The city has collected only about 13,000 tons from people, and of those taking part, only about 10% save their scraps. We've been telling you about harvest trouble spots caused by rain and snow, so what could that mean for USDA's latest crop production numbers? We'll have some analysis coming up. And later, making the tough choice to shut down the family dairy farm for good.
Now it all grows cobwebs.
That's ahead in the country. Agribusiness, a mixed day for markets with grains gaining in the wake of weather and new USDA numbers. Let's see how things finish the week from our friends on the floor.
Soybeans were rising. The USDA surprise yesterday cut the yields and really get some big support all the way across the market in the grains. Perhaps these last two sessions were a little bit overdone, and so it was due for a little bit of a correction and the market moved up. It really offers some hope for some further cuts, really mainly for the corn, but that will definitely help the soybeans. So we're going out this week with a little bit of a bullish sentiment. Now with the corn, it was higher. Of course, that report cut in the yield just helped the market completely. The total supplies are still up for corn, so we have to watch that. That may put a cap on any kind of a market. We're up above that 370 mark for the December contract, so that looks very strong going into the weekend. If we can continue to get more buying coming in, maybe we'll solidify that and push us up and maybe give 370 more of a support number as opposed to a resistance. Now the feeders really tanked, and I think that tells the tale of what's happening. That corn rally extended the decline in the feeders, and that just says an overall optimism is nowhere to be found. That's all from the floor at the CME Group here in Chicago. I'm Virginia McGathy.
A new crop production report from USDA shows some big numbers out there, but there could be bumps in the road before harvest is complete. Tyne Morgan talks with Chip Flory about it. Today's analysis from the road.
Here now with Chip Flory, host of AgriTalk After the Bell. Chip, we had our last USDA report. Now we have a better idea of crop production, better idea of yield. Triggered a bullish reaction in the market. So where do we go from here?
Well, do we have a better idea? With some of the conditions that we've got in the Western Corn Belt right now, corn I'm worried about. Soybeans I'm super worried about when you look at Wisconsin, Minnesota, the Dakotas, Nebraska, Iowa, parts of Kansas, even parts of Missouri. I think this number that we got west of the Mississippi those are the biggest numbers that we're going to see all year on soybeans.
So do you think there is a discrepancy with what we're seeing now from USDA and what we'll see the final harvested yield be?
Yeah, there's a difference between biological yield that's in the field and actual harvested yield, and I think we're going to find out more about it as we go on. And on soybeans, though, I don't know if it really makes that much difference for the price outlook because we are still dealing with a very big bean crop and a very big supply. Corn, if we take another bushel off of the national average yield, it starts to have an impact on the price outlook.
But you mentioned soybeans, a really big yield. We're looking at South America numbers starting to roll out, and they're looking for a really big crop in South America as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The private analysts here in the U.S. are really looking for a big crop out of Brazil, even Argentina. But we do have the development of El Nino that is starting. That means dry conditions in the northern, maybe the central parts of Brazil, wet conditions down in Argentina again. So we've got the next 4 months are going to tell us a lot about the global supply of both corn and soybeans.
Things could get interesting. Let's hope they get interesting in a positive way,
In a positive
Chip.
way,
Yeah.
absolutely.
All right, thanks, Chip. We'll have more Ag Day when we come back right here.
Welcome back to Ag Day. Here with meteorologist Cindy Clausen looking at the drought monitor. And Cindy, we have seen some big improvements, and I expect we'll see more improvements with all the rain we've seen.
Yeah, especially in the eastern half of the country. Obviously, with Michael, we're going to see that drought that you're seeing in the southeastern United States pretty much go away. In some cases, in the Midwest, it's been a little bit too heavy as well, but we've seen some pretty big improvements there. But out west, it's a different story as we continue to see extreme dryness, exceptionally dry out in the Four Corners region. Most of the western United States is seeing some pretty dry conditions. All right, let's take a look at what we have in store for us as far as the jet stream. We continue to see a big trough right here in much of the Plain States, the Great Lakes, all the way back down to the Four Corners region with a ridge right along the west coast. We'll see warm temperatures there, but things are going to get a little stormy. Watch what happens as I put this into motion. We start to see a little cutoff there in the Four Corners region. We'll continue with the chilly weather, especially kind of for the northeastern quadrant of the country. Still remaining warm, though, as you get down south. Later on in the week, we see another little dip in the jet stream there, and eventually we're going to see that coming all the way through the country. But then we're going to see another ridge kind of affecting most of the western United States. So eventually warmer temperatures as we get by the weekend, even for the Four Corners region, which I think will be a little bit cooler to start off the week because of the stormier conditions. Overall, we're looking at cooler than normal temperatures right on from the northeast down to the Four Corners region, even the western Gulf Coast states. A little bit on the warm side, especially as you get down towards Florida, and on the warm side in the extreme west as well. Precipitation-wise, we're looking at below normal as you get to the Great Lakes, most of the Corn Belt, the Plain States, and off into the northwest, but we are expecting some wetter than normal conditions in parts of the southwestern and south central United States. Looking a little bit further ahead into the future, here's your 30-day temperatures, and they are pretty similar to what we are expecting over the next week, with cooler than normal conditions for most of the northeast, the north central United States, the plains, all the way down into the southern plains as well, and eastern parts of the Four Corners region. Above normal temperatures expected into the southeastern United States, the far southeastern United States, and right along the far western United States. Precipitation-wise, that one changes a little bit between the next week and the next 30 days. Fairly normal chances of precipitation as we see the eastern half of the country down into the southwest, the southern plains, into parts of the southwest. We are looking at above normal precipitation, a little bit on the dry side as you get over into the Pacific Northwest. That's a look at your national forecast. Now let's check on the weather where you live. Brush, Colorado, sunny and warmer for you today with a high of 42 degrees. Marksville, Louisiana, showers and thunderstorms with a high of 77 degrees. And Beverly, Ohio, cloudy skies, some rain will be likely with a high of 60 degrees.
Up next, Machinery Pete.
Hey, stay tuned, folks. Coming up, we're going to talk about the market for used combines with a few years on them.
And later, the dairy business continues to face challenges in 2018. We'll meet an Illinois farmer closing the door on a century-old dairy today and in the country.
Ag Day, brought to you by Prosaro Fungicide from Bayer.
Sales of combines and tractors are still going strong. That's according to the Association of Equipment Manufacturers' September Ag Equipment Sales data. AEM says U.S. sales of self-propelled combines are up 9% September from a year prior. U.S. sales of four-wheel drive tractors grew 52% month over month. Now, for the beginning of the year until now, U.S. combine sales topped 21% and four-wheel drive tractor sales, well, they're up 18.5%. Machinery Pete says he's also seeing more interest in combines. Here's Greg.
Well, search traffic for used combines at our machinerypete.com website went up 72.7% in the just recently finished third quarter versus the second quarter. Now, obviously, it's the time of year to be looking for a combine, but still, 72% jump, that's pretty big. Now, one trend I've been seeing on the auction market with used combines, very nice condition older machines. There's been strong buyer demand for these things. Now, just last Monday on a farm auction up in southern Ontario, this 20-year-old John Deere 9410 two-wheel drive, 2,520 engine hours on it, sold for $68,530 US. Well, now that's the highest auction price I've seen in 6 years on a 9410. Now, this trend I'm seeing goes across all color lines. Here's a picture of a 1992 Case H 1640, 1,845 engine hours on it, sold with no heads on a farm auction in Northwest Ohio back on August 10th. Went for $32,000, highest auction price in over 5 years on a 1640. Now, if we want to talk yellow machines, here's a picture of a beautiful 2002 New Holland TR99. Now, this thing sold with a 14-foot head, had 2,982 engine hours on it. The farm auction was in central Saskatchewan back on July 10th, and it went for $38,155 US. And how does that compare? Well, that's the second highest auction price in 5 years on a TR99.
Coming up, more than 100 years of history comes to an end.
It's tough to get used to coming into an empty barn.
Why one dairy farmer has closed his doors. Next in the country.
In the Country, brought to you by Kubota's M7060, built to get the job done. See KubotaUSA.com or your local Kubota dealer for more information.
AgDay's Betsy Tippin joins me now. Betsy, U.S. dairies are closing at an absolutely alarming rate, especially the largest dairy producing state of Wisconsin, where almost 500 farms have closed just this year.
That's right, Clinton. It's a trend that's continuing around the country. And I visited one dairy farmer in Illinois who sold all of his cows over the summer. It was a hard decision since his family has been in the dairy business for over 100 years. An old barn stands tall. Its concrete walls the foundation of a century-old dairy.
It's tough to get used to coming into an empty barn.
A business now bare for Gardner, Illinois farmer Scott Halpin. Cobwebs cover empty stalls since exiting the business and selling his 40 cows back in July.
The hardest part was the history of it. We've milked cows on this farm for 102 years, and it's all that I've ever done on this farm.
Halpin knows he's not alone.
Illinois is not a huge dairy producing state, but the numbers in Wisconsin are staggering.
This is, without a doubt, larger loss of dairy farms right now than we've seen in a long, long time.
The Wisconsin Department of Agriculture, Trade and Consumer Protection shows there are 8,304 dairies currently licensed in the state during October. That's 68 fewer dairies than September and 497 less since its January 1 number.
It's typical for us to lose between 4 and 5% of dairy farms a year. Just consolidation of an industry, getting smaller in numbers and larger in milk production per farm. But currently this year we're between 6 and 7% loss of dairy farms.
Stevenson says dairies are closing for many reasons.
I think a lot of folks who are not making money and haven't for 4 years are just saying, look, at my stage of life, I'm talking about borrowing money to continue to milk cows at a loss.
The industry is trying to help.
From a national standpoint, we are working on improving the dairy title of the safety net. We do need to further strengthen the margin protection program in the Farm Bill, the next Farm Bill, whenever that gets passed.
But it's not just finances.
Is there a second generation that's willing to return back to the operation that's in existence as it stands today? Do they have the equity to come back to the farm?
It's one of the reasons Halpin decided to leave.
That inability to expand and get more profitable, get to a more profitable size, to where I could bring a son or a daughter back into the farm, that's not there. The ability's not there.
Leaving this trusty old barn full of memories rather than cows, a symbol of a dairy industry from past generations struggling to find a place in the future. Now, Halpin does still have row crops, but he told me the inability to expand is not the only reason he decided to get out of the business. He only milked about 40 cows, and with his size of a dairy, he says it wasn't worth it to make technology advances either.
All right. Thanks, Betsy. That's a tough decision. Appreciate it. And that's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. Spent part of your day with us. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day.